Hello and welcome to this special edition of Rügsæk Solo. I am going to look at the combat rules because in my last solo session, I have since then I've realized that I made some mistakes during combat. So, and what I initially wanted was actually to, as I play Rügsæk Solo, I wanted to sort of go through the rules with you. And I was a bit both head-on with the combat, but I also skipped a lot of options I could have used during combat. May seem funny when you think that I was I'm the one who wrote the rules, but yes, I'm new to all these OBS and YouTubing. So I think I got a bit ahead of myself. Um, and yeah, it made me want to take a look uh, back at the combat rules. And also I've tried to uh, I've actually I have some thoughts about adding some new rules to combat. Yeah, and let's take a dive into combat. Yes, I'm getting my document open. Um, I'm just going to read the first paragraph of combat um, aloud, out loud, because it's sort of evident of um, Rügsæk and what to expect of combat. So, Rügsæk combat is not soft on the player characters, and they will die if they run head-on into every encounter. Instead, try and think of a clever way to go around a fight. That said, combat can be very fun game-wise, but be wise and best avoid it. Combat is always the last resort. Okay. And with that in mind, looking back on what happened in the Rügsæk Solo episode 3, where Marcy died, I'm going to run through the rules. So, first of all, combat is sort of abstracted into 3 zones. There can occur more zones during the fight. So you have to imagine that when player characters forced to fight, they have their starting position, and the enemies have their starting position. So, and if they clash together, that's the melee zone, and the starting zone of the player characters get the ranged melee zone, and respectively for the opponents that their starting zone is now their ranged zone. Anyways, so in the melee zone, what you can do there, you can obviously do melee attacks. You can disengage to one of the ranged zones or to a new adjacent zone. You can cast a spell, do a dirty trick, and trade items. You cannot reach for your Rügsæk in the melee zone. What can you do in the player character's ranged zone? You can disengage to a new zone or enter the melee zone. You can aim, you can do a ranged attack, meaning you can fire into the melee zone or fire into the range zone or any other zone actually. You can cast a spell, you can pull an item from your backpack, and you can trade an item with another player. Yeah, and the same rules apply for the opponent's ranged zone. Okay, so as in other tabletop games, combat is divided into rounds. A round is over when all combatants have had their turn. At the start of each combat round, the GM rolls the hazard die. You can see that on page 25. Okay, so I'm just running through the player actions here. For further advice, I would say that having generally also actually, to have when you start playing the game, like any other game, you should have your copy or of the book next to you. That's always a good idea, but if you play it like me here now, like have it on a PDF, always turn the page to the specific page of the action. Let's say that if I was in combat, I would turn to the combat section and run it through, and be very, to begin with, until you have it. I mean, have it at your side so you can always double check. You don't necessarily have to follow every rule to an inch or what you say, but it's a good idea to get the structure down, to learn it. So I'm just going through the player actions or the player options here. So actually, what I did wrong last time was that in Rügsæk, both players and the opponents have two unique actions they can perform during their turn. However, you can only do one type of attack, and attacks include melee or ranged or dirty trick, and it also counts as a harmful spell also directed at a target also counts as an attack, obviously. Okay, so I'm also running through the how to attack rules now, but I will say a few words after because I've made a few in my own Rügsæk document. I added some changes and I want to go through them as well. But you will not be able to read them here, but I'm going to go through them with you. So, okay. When you do an attack, you must first declare who you are attacking. So, and you use your strength die for melee attack and agility for ranged attack and brains for stealth and faith for prayers and magic songs. So declare your target, roll your ability die, plus any relevant bonus. It could be your attack power bonus. It could also be if you had a strength bonus or an agility bonus or whatever, what have you. And I must also say that spell damage ignores armor. Okay, yes, yeah. If you beat the opponent's roll, the difference plus the relevant bonus is the damage done. If your opponent's roll beats yours, it's a miss. Okay. So that's how you would attack, and you can apply these new rules I've added if you want to. The only new rule is that in these rules you're sort of like throwing both dice at the same time. So with my new rules, let me start it elsewhere actually. When you make an attack, players in this game always do the rolls. I don't, the GM doesn't do any of the rolls here. The GM only rolls the hazard die. So the new, you could call it optional rule, is that the player firstly rolls the opponent's defense die. And if it comes up with a 1, the opponent's defense roll, you get an option. You can choose a lower die, or you can still use your own attack die, but you can also choose to roll with a lower die. Like, let's say your opponent uses a d10 and he rolls a 1. That's that puts him in a disposition. So you can choose to take, let's say, if you have 8 in strength and you're in a melee fight, you can choose to roll with the lowest die, which is a d4, or you can choose to roll with a d6 or d8 or d10, but not above your own strength. Then the reason for this is that it optimizes the chance of a crit. Because I thought that with the rules as they are now, it would be I wanted to up the chances actually to get a crit. But it's a gamble. So because when you're rolling a lower die, let's say the d4, the chances of getting you rolling your highest is the same as you rolling your lowest. So it's a gamble. But I thought that would be a fun idea, so I'm in my next session 4, I'm going to apply these new rules. Anyways, let's take a look at movement in combat. Because you can only do one unique action, you can only move one zone. If you move away from a zone with an enemy in, you must pass an agility test or take a blow. Okay. You can also aim. You can aim for one action. You get to ignore your opponent's armor value on your ranged attack, on your attack roll. Another action or option you have in combat is that, which also takes is a unique action, is that you can pull something from your Rügsæk. Pass an item. You can pass an item to another player character or an NPC. And then we have dirty tricks. This counts as an attack. You can either grab your opponent and you make a strength versus difficulty die test. To uphold the grapple, you must further do a strength versus difficulty die for each round you're trying to uphold the grapple. You can also push your opponent into another zone. This is strength versus the difficulty die. You can also throw dirt in the opponent's eyes. This is an agility versus difficulty die move. If you pass, your opponent loses one action. Opponent's actions. Opponent's actions are controlled by the GM, and the same rules apply to them. So, when, let's say I'm the GM and I say that this skeleton archer attacks you with his bow, you must first make your own defense roll before the attack roll. Yes, the same rules applies to the opponent. So the GM will let you know whether your opponent uses a lower die or not. You don't get to decide that. Okay. So we got down to defense rolls. When you make your defense roll, you use your appropriate ability die, which in a melee case would be the strength die, or in a if you get shot at, it's agility, and if there's a spell cast on you, it's your brains die, and if you got a faith spell directed at you, you're using your faith die. And you on attacks, on melee and ranged attacks, you of course add your armor value, and ranged attack ignores. Yeah, I think that covers combat. So, oh yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about, actually, let me go up to the index, is yeah, where are all the monsters? Build a beast section, because I want to go through that as well, because when I play solo, in the solo videos, this is the steps I'm going through. So yeah, it just explains how to quickly build a sort of your opponent and monster. So but the thing I added here is this. I added a D6 monster reaction table, because in the last Solo Rügsæk episode 3, and episode 2 actually as well, I didn't roll any reaction rolls for the opponents, and I thought it was kind of missing from my game, so I added that. So you can see you just throw a d6, and yeah, I can quickly run through them. So when you meet someone where you are uncertain of the outcome, how they react, you would roll a 6-sided die, and a 1 is they attack or they act hostile. 2 is unfriendly reaction. 3 and 4 are neutral or uncertain disposition. Sorry. 5 is indifferent or uninterested reaction, and 6 is actually friendly and helpful disposition. So yeah, and for further encounters, I'm going to use this reaction table. So I guess that's all for this video. So I will quickly go and record episode 4. Bye for now.